He can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard his Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hoshiana, Hoshiana. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Joey.
How are y'all today?
Awesome.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to start out with telling y'all what the name of the sermon is. The name of the sermon is, you ready? The end is near. Are you getting ready? That sounds kind of ominous, doesn't it? I mean, like I can think about like end time things like on that streaming thing called PureFlix, where like this is some kind of show during Revelations. I can even hear like the announcer's voice going, "The end is near. Are you getting ready?" Today's sermon is going to be about an end time. It's just not going to be about the end of times. So don't worry about that. You'll feel good, hopefully, by the time we get through with this. So what I want to start with is where we are at today. So today is February 5th, 2020. More importantly, today is about the second week of the 11th month. What did I say?
2020.
Man, I'm going to tell you what, my vision was off, wasn't it? So we are in February 5th, 2022. But more importantly, we are in the 11th month of the Hebrew calendar. Do y'all know what that means? The end is near. Are y'all getting ready? That's a lot better than, hey, we're all going to die, isn't it? So, but what that also means is that we have about 2 months to get ready for our appointment that we have where we're going to meet with Yahweh. And so what I'd like to do is go over those appointments with you real quick, and then we're going to get into some other stuff. So let's go look at Exodus 23:14 through 17. And I'm going to be reading from the ISR Scriptures, the 98 version. All right, Exodus 23:14, and that's on page 81. 3 times in the year you are to observe a festival to me. Guard the festival of unleavened bread. 7 days you eat unleavened bread as I commanded you, at the appointed time in the month of Abib. For in it you came out of Mitzrayim, and do not appear before me empty-handed. And the festival of the harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field, and the festival of the ingathering at the outgoing of the year, when you have gathered in the fruit of your labors from the field. 3 times in the year all your males are to appear before the Master Yahweh. Let's look at it again in Exodus 34. Just a few pages over on page 94. We're going to be in verses 21 through 24. Exodus 34:21. 6 days you work, but on the 7th day you rest. In plowing time and in harvest you rest. And perform the festival of weeks for yourself, of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the festival of ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times in the year all your men are to appear before the Master Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel. For I dispossess nations before you, and shall enlarge your borders, and let no one covet your land, when you go out to appear before Yahweh, your Elohim, 3 times in the year. All right, one more place just to look at. We're going to flip over to Deuteronomy. We're going to be in Deuteronomy 16. It's going to be on page 203. We're going to be 16 and 17. Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times a year all your males appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place which he chooses. At the festival of unleavened bread and the festival of weeks, and at the festival of booths, And none should appear before Yahweh empty-handed, but each one with the gift of his hand, according to the blessing of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you. All right, so I gave a message one time called Meeting with the CEO of the Universe, and I'm actually going to be expounding on some of that in this message. And if you haven't seen that message, it's kind of cool. You might want to go back and watch it at some point in time. But one of the things that we found out in that message is, first off, over here where it says empty-handed in verse 16, that word handed is actually added. The word there is actually Rahim, which is the Strong's number H7386, and it just means to be empty, in empty condition, emptily, in vain, without effect, or vainly. And the other word that we looked up in that point was appear. So it says appear before Yahweh empty. That word just means to perceive, to consider, to have vision, to look at, to gaze at, to appear. So it means to be present and not be empty. During the course of that sermon, though, we talked about, I forgot the Strong's. The Strong's definition of the word for empty just means empty, idle, or worthless. Okay, so that sounds a little bit different than just empty-handed. When you think empty-handed, you think about maybe I didn't show up with the offering that I was supposed to have or something along those lines. So this gives a different connotation. And during that sermon, we talked about the 3 times in the year and that they might be a little bit different than what we thought. That it might not just be what we do at our congregation, which isn't wrong, but what we do at our congregation is all the males will circle up and at each one of those appointed times, and we go and we ask Yahweh to help us to be better husbands, to be better leaders, to be better, just better for him, and rededicate ourselves in those times. In that sermon, though, I thought it might be more than that. That empty that might be there is not showing up with a plan for the future coming in to the new year. Not having any goals, not having any aspirations for the next year. And that the 3 different times were times that you actually go and you meet with Yahweh, present your plan for what you're planning to do, and then make sure you're getting his blessing out of it. So that was part of it. We talked about how empty can mean unprepared for that meeting. So that could be if you're up there and you're idle and you haven't took the time to go back and look and see, hey, what am I doing? How am I doing? What do I need to do to be moving forward? And I just show up to a meeting with Yahweh unprepared, I might be a little empty. In that message, we talked about goal settings. We went over the 7 areas of goal setting, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. And we also went over what SMART goals are. We talked about the importance of having written goals and that you should review them on a regular basis and just how much more effective it makes you to have goals that are written that you review regularly. But today I want to build on those ideas and go into depth with another portion of that sermon, and that portion is called the end of year review. First off, it's always important to begin with why. Why do we need to have the end of year review? So I wanted to show you something that I found in Scripture that kind of says, Yahweh was saying, hey, this is what I want to have happen. It's a strange source, though. So let's turn over to Job and take a look. We're going to be in Job chapter 1 and chapter 2. It's going to be Job chapter 1, verses 6 through 12. All right, now I want you to notice this very first verse. And the day came to be that the sons of Elohim came to do what? Present themselves before Yahweh. And you know who else came? Satan came along too. And Yahweh said to Satan, from where do you come? And Satan answered Yahweh and said, from diligently searching in the earth and from walking up and down in it. So he didn't start out with, hey, what are you going to be doing? He said, hey, what you been doing? That's looking at what was happening in the past. And Yahweh said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a perfect and straight man who fears Elohim and turns aside from evil? And Satan answered Yahweh and said, is Job fearing Elohim for naught? Have you not made a hedge around him and around his household and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hand, and his possessions have increased in the field. What comes next is that Satan's going to tell him, hey, I'd like to do something. Verse 11, but stretch out your hand, please, and strike all that he has, if he would not curse you to your face. So Yahweh says, you know what? All right, I'll let it happen. He established his path. And Yahweh said to Satan, see, all that he has is in your hand, only do not lay a hand on himself. Do not lay a hand on himself. And Satan went out from the presence of Yahweh. All right, so we just saw an account of what a meeting typically looks like whenever you're having a business meeting. It's like, hey, what you been doing? All right, what do you plan on doing? Am I cool with it? And that's basically what just happened with Satan and Yahweh. And I found it very interesting that whenever he went to go do that, it was during the times that the sons of Elohim went to present themselves. Sounds kind of like what happens in the 3 times in the year, doesn't it? All right, but it happens again. Let's look at it for a second witness. Let's go to chapter 2. So just flip the page. Verses 1 through 5. Again, the day came to be that the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh. And Satan also came among them to present himself before Yahweh. So see, he's presenting himself. And Yahweh said to Satan, what you planning on doing? Is that what it says? It says, no, where'd you come from? What you been up to? And Satan answered Yahweh and said, from diligently searching in the earth and from walking up and down in it. And Yahweh said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? That there is none like him on the earth, a perfect and straight man, who fears Elohim and turns aside from evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity. Although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered Yahweh and said, skin for skin, and all that a man has he would give for his life. But stretch out your hand, please, and strike his bones and his flesh, if he would not curse you to his face. Now, Yahweh gives him permission to go out and do that, and he gives him some sort of bad something where he's over there sitting there scraping himself with a pot shear, and it hurts him so bad that his wife come up and said, why don't you just curse Elohim and die? Poor Job. Could you imagine that? I couldn't either. All right. Now, I got to tell you, whenever I found this example of meeting with Yahweh at an appointed time when you appear before Yahweh and the plan that was associated with it, I can't tell you how much I wish it was somebody other than Satan. It would have been so great if it had been Joseph. It would have been so great if it had been Moshe. It would have been even greater if it had been Yahshua that gave the example. And I got to thinking about it, and I was like, Yahweh, why would you put that as the example of it? And it kind of dawned on me that Yahweh might want to draw a correlation that meeting with Yahweh and having a plan and giving an account of yourself is so important that even Hashatan himself has got to show up and do it. I thought, all right, I can deal with that. This is why the end of year review is so important, because it started with, what have you been up to? Where have you been? And if you don't know where you have been, you can't decide on where you're going to go. You can't build a plan for the next year until you know where you are now. So let's look at some scripture about examining ourselves and see what it has to say. Let's go over to Lamentations chapter 3. How do you say this in Hebrew? Is it Akah? Ekah. It's going to be Lamentations chapter 3, and we're going to be on page 797 and verse 40. All right, 340. Let us search and examine our ways and turn back to Yahweh. So we start by looking at ourselves and examining ourselves so that we can turn back to Yahweh. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 13. Not 2 Colossians, right? I messed up one time. I was like, is it Corinthians or Colossians? And then I got set straight by a good brother. All right. 2 Corinthians, we're going to be in chapter 13, and it's going to be 5 through 7. Examine yourself whether you are in belief. Prove yourselves. You got to start by looking at yourself. Or do you not know yourselves that Yahshua Messiah is in you, unless you are disapproved? And I trust that you shall know that we are not disapproved. And we pray to Elohim that you do no evil at all. Not that we should appear approved, but that you should do what is right, even though we should appear unapproved. When you're doing an end-of-year review, you're taking a look at yourself. You're really looking and seeing, what have I done in order to move forward? Let's look at 1 Corinthians 11. I'm going to flip over a chapter. We're We're going to be in verses 28 through 32. That's going to be on page 111 in the 98. All right, sorry. All right, verse 28. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of the bread and drink of that cup. For the one who is eating and drinking unworthily eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning the body of the master. Because of this, many are weak and sick among you, and many sleep. For if we were to examine ourselves, we would not be judged. But when we are judged, we are disciplined by the master, that we should not be condemned with the world. What I took from verse 29 is that if you're not doing any kind of self-examining, all of a sudden you're going to be drinking a cup that you're unworthy for. And so that was pretty stout, because if I'm going to go meet with Yahweh, I need to know where I'm at first, though, that I don't show up in front of him unworthy. But I really need to make sure that I'm looking at me and not anybody else. Let's go look at Matthew 7. I got to tell you, there's a visual Bible version called the Gospel of Matthew, and I love that version. And the reason why I love that version is because it shows Yeshua being a charismatic person. He has a personality. He's not just what you typically see people playing. He's smiling. He's happy. He's full of emotion. And I mean, when he gets mad and he goes and starts taking people out of the temple, he's mad. And whenever he's sad, he's sad. And whenever he's just around people, he's being joyful. And one of the things that happens in this verse is, we're going to talk about getting a splinter of your own eye. He shows just how silly it is to have a big old board in your own eye and you can't see to be able to see other people. And so it's just, if you ever get a chance to watch that, go check it out. All right, so we're going to be at Matthew 7, verse 3. And why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but you don't notice the plank in your own eye? Or how is it that you say to your brother, let me remove the splinter out of your eye, and see, a plank is in my own eye? You hypocrite. First, remove the plank that's from your own eye. Then you shall see clearly to remove the splinter out of your brother's eye. By going and doing an end-of-year review, you're able to look at yourself and make sure, do I have any wood that I need to move around? And it's great to do. But the main thing is that you have to review yourself and not everyone else. This is a deep down personal thing, so make sure you're doing that. Let's go look at Galatians chapter 6. That's going to be on page 1131. We're going to be reading verses 1 through 10. All right, Galatians 6:1. Brothers, if a man is overtaken in some trespass, you, the spiritual ones, set such a one straight in a spirit of meekness, looking at yourselves lest you be tried too. Bear one another's burdens, and so complete the Torah of Messiah. For if anyone thinks himself to be somebody, when he is not, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work, not everybody else's work, his own work, and then he shall have boasting in himself alone, and not another. For each one shall bear his own burden. And let him who is instructed in the word share in all that is good with him who is instructing. Do not be led astray. Elohim is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he shall also reap. Because he who sows to his own flesh shall reap corruption from the flesh, but he who sows to the Spirit shall reap everlasting life and from the Spirit. And let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not grow weary. So then, as we have occasion, let us do good to all, especially to those who are household of belief. The end of year review is an opportunity to take and look and see what did you sow and then how did it produce. And that is a big deal to be able to do. And what is awesome about it is when you start taking that evaluation, what it does is it allows you to be able to look at where you've been and then start dreaming about the future. And where could you go? I'm gonna do a exercise with you where you can go through and do it for yourself. But what's awesome about that is this starts becoming kingdom building stuff. This is where you get to start dreaming about what could be and what is possible, as opposed to just, man, I'm sure I'm tired right now, or golly, I ain't losing weight, or, and things like that. You can really start letting the Spirit of Yahweh influence you and allow you to be able to think of what is possible. And so this type of stuff actually gets me pretty excited because it's something that we don't do on a regular basis, and I'm thankful that Yahweh gave us some time to be able to go out and look at it. All right, so fellas, if you'll go ahead and pass out the worksheet, I'd appreciate it. Okay, the way that I do a end-of-year review is I take a moral inventory and I take a moral inventory with the parameters of going through the 7 areas of goal setting. All right, and so we haven't talked about it this time. We talked about it in meeting with the CFO of the universe, but I'd like to go through them with you. The first one is spiritual, and I have these in this order for a reason. So the first goal area is spiritual, because if you don't start by searching Yahweh first, nothing else matters. Okay. The next one is number 2 is your health, and I've got them in order on your page. You'll see that, because you can be great with Yahweh, but if your body's not able to go and accomplish other things as well, you're not going to be able to feel good enough to go out and do the rest of them. For me, family comes next, because it goes, Yahweh, my health, so that I can live for my family. There's this really cool quote that I saw that said, of course you would die for your children, but would you live healthfully for them? And that hit me between the eyes, because I was like, that's stout. So I've got to be healthy in order to be good for my family. So next area, 3 is family. Number 4 is relationships. Number 5 is business and finance. And then we got number 6 is education. And number 7 is fun. All right, so the first thing that you do in a moral inventory for the previous year is you go out and you list the questions that you have over here. Did you have a goal? And if not, why? Did you accomplish your goal? And if not, why? What did you do this year? How did you do it? What worked well and what didn't work well? And what can you do to improve? I want to go through this with you. Oh, I forgot. I have it over here why I have them in the order that I have them in. So whenever I'm doing a moral inventory and I'm looking in the past to see how did I do spiritual, I've got some different things that I want to think about. I want to think about, did I do good with my sermons? All right. Did I do good with reading my scripture? Did I do good with having prayer time, not just with my family, but also with myself? And I need to get quiet and get by myself and write these things down, because I need to know myself and make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to. And then I have Matthew 6:33 on here, but seek first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these matters shall be added to you. So that's the reason why I have spiritual as number 1. Number 2 is health. And that's where I have that quote about, of course you would die for your kids, but would you live healthily for them? Family, I've got a thing called an I am card, and it says attributes that I want to have. And on it I want to be a great, not a good, but a great husband, a great father, a great son and brother, neighbor and friend. So the neighbor and friend comes up on the next part, which is the relationships, and that's how that gets to that order. Business and finance, this one for us, I've got 2 different businesses that I run, and so this one actually takes a lot longer for me because I got to do it for each business. But still, if you're looking at it from your standpoint, it may just be finance or it could be business. So that's the reason why it's got a hyphen there. All right. Education, what I like to put down there is, what did I read last year? What seminars did I go to? What kinds of things have I been doing to build my head versus just standing in front of the TV watching what's on? And then the last one is fun. And so we had this was not on the list to begin with. It used to only be 6. But I found out that making sure you have fun goals is important, because if you're like me, you'll get out there and work and never have any fun, and then everybody in the house is unhappy. But if you go ahead and make goals for it, you do things like we get to go to the Grand Canyon like we did this year. So that was really cool. All right, let's start with number 1. And I want to do this under the health guys, because it's kind of easy to think about goal setting in the health guys, because we're just used to that. We're used to thinking about how many times we got to work out, how many pounds we got to lose, stuff like that. So let's start with it on that. The first question is, did you have a goal? And so I want you to sit there and I want you to think about it and say, did I actually have a goal? If you did, that's awesome. The reason why that's awesome is because you beat a majority of the United States of America in actually having a goal. There's different statistics that go back and forth on who has goals and who doesn't have goals. But at the end of the day, it seems to be as low as 14% of people actually have a goal each year. And so if you did, good job. If you didn't, I want you to really think about that. Why didn't you set any goals? There's lots of reasons that it could be. I mean, it could be easy as, hey, I got caught up in living and I was going to do it and I didn't get it. Next thing you know, the whole year got away from me and here we are back at the beginning of the new year again. I get that, man. When you got lots of kids, it's easy to do, right? When you got a busy job, it's easy to do, right? There's all kinds of reasons to be able to do it. But I want you to think, why didn't I do that? And the reason why is because you need to know where you are in order to know where you want to get to. Another thing that could happen is you might not thought that you could do it. Proverbs 21:5 says, the plans of the hard worker lead only to plenty, but all rash haste only to poverty. I promise you that if you get out there and you start working at something, Yahweh will bless you for it. So don't think that you can't do it. Yahweh will empower you to be able to get it done. The reason why you didn't have a goal is because you didn't think you were worth it. That's a deep one. That's a real deep one. That's a very personal one too. But I'm here to tell you that you are worth it. I want y'all to look at Deuteronomy 7 with me real quick. It's going to be Deuteronomy 7, 6, and verses 6 through 8. And I've talked to y'all a lot about this because I really think that one of Hashatan's biggest tools is to try to make the people of Yahweh feel like they're less than what they are, to make them feel worthless and dirty on the inside. That ain't how Yahweh thinks about you. Verse 6, 7, 6. For you are a set-apart people to Yahweh, your Elohim. Yahweh, your Elohim, has chosen you. You hear that? Yahweh chose you to be a people for himself. This next word, a treasured possession. What do y'all think that means? Something important, right? That's what Yahweh thinks about you. That you're a treasured possession above all the peoples on the face of the earth. Yahweh did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were numerous, more numerous than any other people, for you were the least of all the peoples. But because Yahweh is loving you, and because of him guarding the oath of which he swore to your fathers, Yahweh has brought you out with a strong hand and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim. You are worth it. Anytime you start feeling like that, I want you to remember, you are a treasured possession of Yahweh, and Yahweh chose you, and he loves you. And then on top of that, he's got something planned for you. Let's turn over to Jeremiah 29:11. It's only one verse, but I love this verse. Yahweh loves you. And Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I am planning for you, declares Yahweh, plans of peace and not evil, to give you a future and an expectancy. And that's one of those scriptures right there that only lifts up your being right now, but is really pivotal whenever you're looking at the first of the year, when it's time to start setting goals. And we've got Psalms 37, 3 through 5. Psalms 37, 3 through 5. Trust in Yahweh and do good. Dwell in the earth and feed on steadfastness, and delight yourself in Yahweh. And let him give you the desire of your heart. Commit your way to Yahweh and trust in him, and he does it. See, you're worth it. Commit your way to Yahweh and trust in him, and he does it. Another thing that you could think of is the reason why you didn't get a goal set is maybe you just think this is dumb and it don't work anyway. Well, Proverbs 16:3 says, commit your works to Yahweh and your plans shall be established. And I kind of knew what plan was, but I just wanted to see what it was. So I Googled it. And plan, a detailed proposal of doing or achieving something. So it's almost like Yahweh wants to establish our plans, but we got to have a detailed proposal for something that we want to achieve if we want to be able to accomplish that. Hence, meeting with the CEO of the universe. All right. A plan is a vision of the future, i.e. a goal. But it's more than that because it has to have an action set put in behind it in order to make it happen. Remember, a vision without a dream is nothing, a vision without a plan is nothing more than a daydream. You got to have action set up behind it. I want y'all to remember the study that was from the other sermon where we talked about Dr. Gail Matthews. She did a study with 270 participants over in the Dominican University in California. I wonder why there's a Dominican University in California. Anyway, the results were pretty astounding. If you write down your goals, you are 42% more likely to achieve them than if you don't write them down. All right, that's huge. So let's go back to number 1. If you did set a goal, then that's awesome. My next thing is I want to ask number 2. Did you accomplish it? All right, and that's pretty easy. It's either yes or no. Did you do it? Did you not do it? I guess there could be a maybe because there's still 2 months left, but most of the time it's yes or no. If you did, awesome. Write it down and say, hey, I'm doing good. If you did not, I want you to ask why. All right? And the reason why is very important because remember, this is all about introspection. This is looking at ourselves. Is the reason why I didn't get it done because I was just lazy? Then you need to write that down. Because that's I've done stuff. I got stuff on my list that didn't get done because I'm lazy. Or because I was being lazy. How about that? But it may be that there was some sort of something that you didn't expect. There could have been something that arose that throughout the year that kept you from getting there. Or there could have been something that you had no idea was going on. I'll give you for instance, I want to talk about my health goals. So last year when I got to Passover, I went to Yahweh and I said, Yahweh, I'm going to weigh 210 pounds by Tabernacles and I'm going to make sure I weigh 210 pounds by Passover the next year. And that was my goal. I did not hit it. The lowest I got was 217, and right now I'm hovering between 223 and 225. Now, I got to tell you, it wasn't for lack of trying. I work out 5, sometimes 6 days a week. I eat well, and I meet with a dietitian. I get this little thing from my heart rate monitor. It tells me how I did, and I've got an interesting heart rate monitor. There's 2 different kinds. There's one that goes on your wrist, and it's got that little light that shoots out of it. What that does is that senses your veins that are right here in your wrist, and they use some kind of algorithm to figure out how much blood is going through your veins to figure out what your heart rate is in order to figure out what your calories are. All right, so that's got a margin of error that's pretty big. I've got one that straps to my chest that has little pads on it and uses the same technology as an EKG in order to read my heart. And that's what I wear for just about everything. So like my workouts consist of, I work out 4 times at the gym and then I swim and run on the other days and sometimes bike. I've not been biking a whole lot right now because it's been cold. But when I say I'm running 3.1 miles. So that's 5K. Or if I'm swimming, I swim at least a mile when I go swim. And I had personal best just a couple of weeks ago where I swam 3,000 yards, which comes out to 1.71 miles. That's a long way to swim. All right. I'm not saying that to brag. What I'm telling you is that I've been out there working it. I've been out there eating right. Matter of fact, that little thing that I got from my heart rate monitor said that in January, I worked out 19 times. I had COVID in January, mind you. I worked out 19 times for the month, and I averaged a calorie burn of over 800 calories per workout. So that's moving. That's working. All right. That's actually doing stuff. But I'm not losing what I'm wanting to lose. It's not just a weight thing. It's also I got this fat around my belly that I can't get rid of. So as it turns out, I've got some kind of low-lying health thing that they can't figure out what it is. It's hormone related, but they can't figure out what it is, and they're working with me, testing me. And I got to go to Yahweh and say, Yahweh, I told you I was going to do 210. I didn't get to 210, and here's why, and I'm working on it. And so that way I can move forward next year with a better health goal and be able to put my plan before him and hopefully have it established. Does that make sense? All right, so the reason why you didn't obtain your goal may be something you were doing and maybe something outside of your control. I feel like this one in particular for me is a little outside my control because they've been taking my blood left and right and doing all kinds of stuff trying to figure out what it is. And they're working, but hormones are a weird thing. You got to do something and test it and see if it's working and then adjust. And so we still haven't got there yet. But I did accomplish another one of my health goals. I told y'all about it. I had anticipated to I had it written down that I was going to do a triathlon sprint on October 3rd. And I did it, and I enjoyed it, and it was good. I trained for it, and it was great. All right? So, if you achieved your goal, awesome. If you didn't, write down why. Question number 4. What did you do? And so that's a little bit broad. The reason why it's a little bit broad is because I want you to write down under each one of those 7 categories, what all did you do that went into this category for the year? And that's going to take some time. It easily takes a week of you sitting there, and I'm not talking about a week straight, but in the evenings writing down in a book what all you have done for the last year. All right. And what that allows you to do is you can sit there and look at, was I doing things that were working towards these type goals, or was I doing things that were working away from those type goals? That's very beneficial as you go to start your new plan. How did you do it? Your how is very important too, because you might look at your how and realize, hey, that ain't how I need to be doing it. And if I make this little shift, that might make things better. The next 2 questions are important. What worked and what didn't work? You write those things down on the different areas that you were doing with what all you did. And then you'll be able to figure out, hey, I need to spend my energy on this stuff and not on this stuff. Or, hey, this just flat out didn't work. I won't ever do it again. So that works out. Then the very last one is, what can I do to improve? And the reason why that is one of the, I can't say it's the most important question, but it's a very, very important question, because if you can answer that question of what can I do to improve, all of a sudden you can start having a plan of action or an idea as to what your goal is going to be for the coming year when you go to meet with Yahweh. All right. So I had some people last time ask me, how do you get a 1-year picture? Answer that question right there. What can I do to improve? In the next year, what can I do to improve? What do I look like in the next year? And that right there will give you your action plan that you can go back and make different SMART goals with. All right, so I've told you all about the 7 areas of goal setting. I've told you the questions that you should ask during the end of year review, but I hadn't told you about a book that I read called The Slight Edge. All right. The Slight Edge is a book by a guy named Jeff Olson. And Jeff studied success and what made people successful. And he was very impressed by what he found. He found out that most successful people aren't just struck with it with some kind of big something that happened overnight. He started looking at it and he said, almost all of it came from making little small decisions compounded over time. And that's what allowed people to be successful. And he said, what's interesting about those little ideas is that they're real easy to do. Anybody can do them. But the problem with it is that they're also easy not to do. All right, so it's easy to do and it's easy not to do. It's easy to get out of bed at 4:45 in the morning when the alarm goes off to go head off to the gym. Man, it's easy not to. I've been doing it. All right. The other thing about it is that the reason why it's easy not to do is because most of the time it's not a life or death situation. So if you get in there and you eat a greasy, nice, awesome cheeseburger, it's probably not going to kill you. But if it compounds over time and you do it day in and day out and your heart is not going to be able to keep up and it's going to be bad for you. But on the opposite side, all right, exercising. You go out and exercise one day, you're not just going to be struck healthy. Matter of fact, if you ain't worked out in a while and you go work out, you're probably going to be unhealthy for the next couple of days. You're going to be sore. All right? And so it's not until they start compounding over time that you spend time after that you actually see the results. That's the same thing with this with the end of year review. All right? The end of year review and setting goals. It takes time for it to be able to gain traction. And what's interesting about it is doing this stuff, it's easy to do. It's also real easy not to do. You know what else? It's real easy to do part of it and then forget about it and not get it done. Don't let that be what happens to you. Make sure that this becomes a priority to you so that you are ready to meet with Yahweh whenever the time comes. I've gotten way off without looking at my stuff, y'all. Give me 1 second. Man, I done jumped a page on you. All right, so the end of year review, to go through all these questions in the 7 areas of goal setting, takes a lot of time. And I promise you, it will probably take about a week with you sitting in by yourself with a notebook, about an hour or 2 each night, writing all these things down. Matter of fact, if you could do one section each night, you'd have 7 days worth of it, and you've got a week, and that'd be great. But if you do that, you will see a much better year, a much more prosperous year next year. I want y'all to remember what it says in Proverbs 16:3. Commit your works to Yahweh, and your plans shall be established. Proverbs 3:4 and 5 says, thus finding favor That's not what Proverbs 3, 4, and 5 says. That is what it says right there. Okay. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in Yahweh with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways, and he makes your paths straight. That's the one that I really wanted you to know is that by knowing him in all your ways, going and asking him whenever you go to present yourself, hey, is this good with me? And making him a part of your planning process will really make your path straight. Number 6, 23 through 26. Let's turn over there real quick. This is what they call the Aharonic blessing. And I love it because, first off, it's always saying, hey, how are we going to get blessed? But the last part of it's really, really cool to me. Number 6:23. Speak to Aharon and his son, saying, this is how you bless the children of Israel. Say to them, Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and show favor to you. And Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give peace to you. And I don't want you to forget that Yahweh says one more thing right after that. He said, thus they shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I myself shall bless them. When you go and you put these in front of Yahweh and you ask him to help you with this, he will bless you. If you commit your works to him, he will bless you and he will establish you. The end is near of the year. This is how you get ready for your meeting with the CEO of the universe at the appointed time, which is in the first month, the month of Abib. And this will get you on your path so that when you appear before the Master Yahweh, that you won't appear empty. Shalom.